Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Leadership with Heart podcast. It's Heather, your hostess with the mostest. And I am joined by Sarah Wilson, and I'm excited to talk to her. Well, it's going to become really obvious why I'm excited to talk to her in a little bit. For those who know me, yeah, I won't say anything else on that, but she was someone who was brought to me as a suggestion to have on the show. And I loved the unique story of she and her husband and the business. And I can't wait for you to hear some of that part of it. And then just for us to meet a little bit more, meet her some more and find out more about her. So welcome, Sarah.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to chat and your love of a similar product. I'm excited about that too.
Okay, well, now I'm sure people are intrigued. So tell everybody where you are right now. Where are you right now in your leadership journey?
So currently I run a small business called Chip. And, we call ourselves the original gourmet chocolate cookie company. And so, as a leader, I run the business with my husband, which is, its own set of challenges trying to lead him, but I really, we started this business. I was having pregnancy cravings and we started, my husband would run around town in LA looking for cookies and there wasn't anything like this. And so he wrote a business plan. I thought it was crazy. He said, stick with your day job. I'm not a trained baker. And we just couldn't stop thinking about the idea. And so, we started this business 6 years ago, almost exactly 6 years ago, and, really opened our doors and had no idea the response that we would have. And so as a leader, I feel like I've just kind of been, almost had to jump into this role that I wasn't necessarily planning on, I have a master's degree and I've done some leadership roles in the past, but really owning your own business and we have over 300 employees and leading them is a journey for sure. I love that you call it a journey because it has been a journey for me. And so always learning and trying to improve and be a great leader. And I think it always changes too, what type of employee you have. And but it's been a fun journey so far of, you can't beat cookies, right? Like it's just fun. Sometimes I just sit back and think, we sell cookies. Like how amazing is that this is our job, right? I'm the same as you. Like all my teeth are sweet. I say, like I have a dessert after every meal.
Yes. Oh, it's a total, oh man, that's a problem for me. It really is. And the reason why I was saying earlier for everybody listening is warm chocolate chip cookies are like my thing. It's like any warm cookie, to be honest, but chocolate chip cookies are the thing. So when I saw, chip and cookies and I was like, oh yeah, I've got to talk to them. And then I love, the other thing that we have in common is that you have one girl and 3 boys like I do. They're on the other end of the age spectrum, but, that's another thing that when we think about leadership with the heart and like, how are you handling that? Because people ask me this all the time. Like, how do you handle kind of the balance between, again, owning a company that has 300 employees and then having these 4 children at home? What does that look like?
That is it's probably been one of the hardest journeys I've ever been on of being a working mom. And I feel like it's something people don't talk about enough. It's funny because I asked my husband, I'm like, he walks out the door to work and I'm like, do you feel any guilt or do you feel any of the things I'm feeling, And he's like, nothing. Like, it's just very different for a man,
Wow.
and I have very young children. And so it has been a journey for me, but there have been a few things that have helped me and I have great mentors, but for me, the biggest thing that has helped me is someone told me this quote that you outsource the things that don't need your touch. And that was very helpful for me. We can't do it alone. As women, we try to, right? We think we can do everything. And I've found a way to outsource the things that don't need me necessarily. And it's hard with kids because your kids are the thing that you don't want to outsource, right? And you have to do a little bit of that. They can't be on a call or, there's some of that, but how, I try to limit that. And so I try to take the things out of my day that maybe don't need me, do I need to be doing the laundry or even with work, as a founder and an entrepreneur, you tend to be very almost possessive of everything and controlling, like this is another baby for me, really. It's kind of like twins actually.
Yeah.
And you in the beginning, you're like, I don't want anyone else to touch it. This is, you can't take care of it as well as I can. But really, you start to learn your skill set is actually great for this. And this doesn't need my touch anymore. And I can outsource that or bring somebody in to help me with that. And that's really helped me as a mom and an entrepreneur and a business owner to find help in the ways that, would be helpful for my business and that don't necessarily need me doing it and can free up my time for the things that I do need to be doing.
Yes, I love that so much. There's a couple of things that come to mind. First is like the idea of self-care. Like we have to be able to say, I can only do so much. I have limits. I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to go nuts right here if I don't actually, if I don't get some help in that regard. So it's, it takes a lot of courage, trust, all of those things to do that. The other thing is that, when we think about outsourcing, sometimes people are like, well, gosh, what is it like beneath you? And I like to think of it as, so many of us are gifted in certain areas. So we all have our own strengths. And so like, when I think about outsourcing, I think about giving, like saying to someone else, like, this is a thing that lights you on fire, right? How about you go do more of that? Since it doesn't light me on fire, it takes my fire away, or it takes my energy away. And then everybody's doing what it is that lights them a fire. And voila, we're like this great running organization. Right. Versus just like saying, go do this thing and you hate this thing and I hate this thing. And then everybody's just like miserable in their job,
Absolutely. I adhere to that 100%. I totally agree. And that's part of my leadership journey has been as a leader, finding people, in our organization and saying, wow, you really shine at this, like you, and finding a place for them. It may not be the position that they're currently in, but saying, you look at this, like you shine and you succeed in this area. Let's find a spot for you, and that has been a key for me in building our organization for sure.
Yeah. I can imagine starting with just you and your husband and all of a sudden you got 300 people. That has got to be, is just a whole nother challenge in itself. What have been your biggest learnings? I'm curious in that regard, just your biggest learnings from going from like just you two to like 300 now.
So many learnings, I think again, as an entrepreneur and a founder, you're so possessive of things and you feel a little bit like with like that baby mentality, like you can't take care of it as much, and just starting to open your mind to the fact that people will care too. If you invest in them, they'll invest in you. And I've really learned so much about giving that trust to people, and I think when you give that trust, people meet you, halfway. And I've really learned so much about that because I think it's very different when you start a business and you have this like mother mentality over your brand, and to allow people, you can think we have recipes, right? Like these recipes are like beloved, and how could I'm going to have to be the only one that makes the cookies. Like that was my mentality. Like, how can I have anyone else make them, And so just giving some of that and trusting in people has been a really big journey for me, but really, allowed the company to grow, and it's something that had to happen, but for sure a hard thing for me and something I didn't expect,
what would those, well, in that group, like in your team, folks that report to you or just in the organization, what would they like, how would they define or describe your leadership style?
I think that they would say I lead by example, they all are just like, can't believe. And it's so flattering, but they're just like, how do you do this? Like you have these 4 little kids, like they see me like running around. I got to go nurse this baby. Then I'm going to jump on a call. Really, it's kind of crazy behind the scenes, like, I'll like, take the video off of the Zoom so I can nurse the baby real quick. It really is crazy. And so they see that and they see the drive and how the passion I have for this. And I think that inspires people, like I have people come to me and, I had an employee who I adored, and she wanted to be a mom one day, but also wanted to work. And she was just so inspired that I was able to have both, and of course she doesn't know all my struggles, I feel like, and maybe it comes off easier than it is because it's very difficult for me and I will never hide that. But I think that people are inspired. My team has been inspired that we have a saying at Chip, we use Chip as like a swear word or near swear. So we say Chip happens, or you go make Chip happen. And that's really my mentality, is we just have to make it happen. Even if I have a crying baby here or got a school pickup, I'm going to make it happen. And I think that that really can inspire your team when they see a leader that's just willing to jump in and not make excuses.
Yeah, I'm feeling you, sister. Although it's a much smaller team, but I totally get that thing. I don't even call it balance. I just call it integration, or like survival. I'm not even sure, right?
Survival. That's the key. Yeah.
Right. It really is about that.
When you
Okay.
start to learn, the more I feel like you talk to other women, and that's been very helpful for me, is reaching out to your community of other women in the business world, and going to lunch with them. And we all have the same struggles. I think I've gotten to know other, business owners, and I think that their life looks perfect, right? Like, oh, they've got it figured out and they've all these kids and like they're doing it so much better than me. And that we all have the same struggles, and you find different advice and help from other people. And that's been really helpful for me, is to, like, almost, because again, my husband can't relate, right? He's like, I feel nothing. Like, I feel great going to work. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't miss them. And I'm like stressing, and so I just, to talk to other women who are in your shoes, it's just, even if you don't even get good advice, it's just to commiserate together.
It really is. I know. Yet I feel like we all just want to feel like we're not alone in this journey of life, right? I think that's the key. Okay. So is there ever, was there something that, cause I know where, your husband had this kind of idea, the business plan, you did it together, but do you feel like there was ever something your child or something bringing up that really kind of created this drive to lead inside of you? Cause you have such a drive. I mean, to be able to continue to do what you're doing with the 4 children, like where's that drive to lead come from?
I grew up in a family of 7 kids, and I'm the second oldest. And so I sometimes feel like I've been a mom forever, I mean, I just had to help. And that was just part of being in a big family, but I've always had this inner desire to succeed, but mostly for myself, and I don't know where that comes from. I think to have something inside of you, and to have, like, at the end of the day, want to make yourself proud, is probably the biggest drive for me, and I think it just started at an early age. My dad, is an amazing attorney, and, very successful. My mom was the nurse. She didn't work when she had kids, though. So that's been something that's been a learning experience for me. That's not what she did. And so I think that's where more of the guilt comes, because I didn't have that. But they both were successful and driven. And I saw that the joy that brought to their life, finding joy in work. And I always have felt this desire to work, but also love being a mom. And I feel so fortunate to be able to do both. Not that it's perfect. I mean, like we've continued to talk about, it's a chip show, I call it, like my show behind the scenes. And it is, but that is life. Like, that's real life. And I'm grateful that somehow I can do both, not perfectly, but I get to do both. So
let's go a little bit deeper into that. So, this is the part of the podcast where where I ask every single guest, a time when they can think of where maybe they were not leaders with heart, where they did not show care for those around them, where they weren't real proud of how they showed up as a leader. What can you think of as a specific story that you can share with us, kind of walk us through it? And then what did you do to kind of rise from it, come out of it, to become a more enlightened leader?
So we had an employee who came to us, and she interviewed for a position. And even in the interview, I was like, she's just not, this isn't the right fit, but we needed to hire somebody, and so we brought her into the position. It was kind of more of a store manager, but she didn't have a ton of experience. And for months and months, I felt her struggle. I mean, she would come to me, but in my mind, I'm like, we just need this position filled. I mean, so much of it is like, we just need a body here, please just do this job. And, but I felt that in me, like, and even in talking to her, she'd talk about other things that she wanted to do, but I didn't need that other position quite yet. Right. So I was kind of pushing her to continue with that. And looking back, it burned her out, like she failed at that position. And I felt that, like, and and that's kind of a little bit about what we talked about before, is is getting to know your team and what their strengths are, and even what their passion is, talking to them. What do you want to do? What are your career goals? What positions do I have in our organization that you would want to do, and that was a really big learning experience for me, because we ended up talking to her, and after months and months of struggling in this position, and she's like, I'd really want to do this, and getting to know her personality, like, you would shine, in more of like a catering position is kind of like, she was just better at that, and talking to people and being more of a store manager and leader of a team wasn't her strength. And so I really learned from that of, I think it's a marriage of what people have passion for, what they're good at, and then what the needs are of the business. And if you can match those up and align those, like you said, it's a very powerful thing for your organization. And as a leader, trying to find that in yourself, and maybe not putting people in positions that you might know, okay, this isn't right for you, but I just need it filled, and I just learned a lot from that, and it's not always perfect, like, oh my gosh, if we could all find the perfect employee who's passionate and, all of that for every position. But when you can, and when you're in that position to do that as a leader, I think it's an incredible tool to use. And you have a happy employee, and you have a happy, organization. And it's great for everybody in the end.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing. I know it's not always easy for us as leaders to be talking about like times when we didn't shine, or we don't feel like we made the right decision. But the good thing to know is that there's hundreds or thousands of people listening to this that will actually be able to benefit from it, right? So that they can actually take this to heart and think, okay, what am I actually facing, and how can I kind of come out of it? So that's the beauty of it all.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, so now we've reached the time of the podcast where we kind of turn the table. So you get to ask me any question. And knowing, so my background really is employee loyalty and leadership, listening, compassionate leadership, things like that. What question might you have for me? Something that you've been kind of wondering about?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if you have experience in this, but we recently started franchising. We've been corporate owned for the past 6 years and started franchising, and it's a different type of leadership as you bring in franchisees, and it's not the same as an employee necessarily, but in some ways, they're working for you. And how would you approach leadership with a franchisee differently than maybe a typical employee?
That's a hard one. I think the biggest difference, I think, would be because it's their own thing, and it depends on how much you control their daily operations. Because, like, right, every franchise kind of model is different. But I would say, if it's more hands off, then it's more just uplifting and encouragement. And it's maybe providing some guidance and direction. But what I would say is this, and I can give you an example of a franchise founder who did this, but didn't do it well to begin with. And it's listening. I think that listening is really what's missing for many of us in all situations in the world, not just at work, but at work, it's real particular for me. And so this idea of really truly listening and including more people in the process of change or improvement or evolution of your business will be really important. So I was interviewing, in the beginning of my podcast and for my book, Chuck Runyon. He's the founder and CEO of Self-Esteem Brands, which is, people know him as Anytime Fitness, but they have like other brands, and they have like 5,000 units now all over the world. It's crazy. But he talked about a time when he and his co-founder were doing this, we were like implementing this change, and they went to the franchisee conference to kind of roll it out, but never included any of them in the decision of this new direction. And they let him know it. Like, they came after and stormed and was like, we do not agree. And he and his co-founder, obviously they thought about it. They realized they kind of did an oopsie and needed to include particularly more influential, larger franchisees to have more representation in the decision for the change. And then going forward, they can retool. And he's like, you have to listen. It doesn't mean you're going to act on every single darn thing, but you have to listen, and you have to let them know that they've been heard, and you need to follow up with them and let them know what the status of things are, to make them feel like they're along the journey with you, instead of things happening to them as a franchisee, they're happening with them. So that's kind of a little insight I would give, and just the experience of hearing other people and knowing that how important listening is, how important it is for someone to see you and to hear you, and for them to feel included in the process.
Yeah, I love that. Totally agree.
So for those who are listening now, then they're looking for a couple pearls of wisdom, what might be some things you might leave them with as they think about their leadership journey?
Well, listening. I think it's just being like humble. I think you can get in a position of leadership and think I know best and I'm, going to tell you everything, but none of us know everything. I mean, if there's anything I've learned, I've known many, very successful people and powerful people, and they're human and they're learning. And to allow yourself to do that, I think you will be a better leader if you are listening and willing to learn yourself, and I think that, and leading by example with that, is I just have felt so much with my own organization of people just watching what I do, and you're really surprised by how much they're watching you, and I think so much of leadership, I mean, even as a mom, right? Like our kids, you can tell them to do this and do that over and over again, but they're going to watch what you're doing. And that's what they're going to follow. And so I've just really learned to lead by example in everything that I'm doing. If I'm going to tell my employees that they need to mop the floor every night, then I'm going to mop the floor if I'm there, like nothing is beneath you as a leader. And I really believe that. I believe that you have to be willing to do the things that you're telling other people to do. And, that may be hard sometimes. And you feel like that's not my role, but I just believe that so much good can come from that if you are willing to pick up that mop and get in there with them.
I love that so much. Thank you for here. For those who are listening right now, hopefully you've taken away a lot from my conversation with Sarah, and can take some of these things to heart. And maybe you found some solutions in what it is you've heard. Don't forget to share it far and wide with those who you think could benefit, because that's where the learning gets good. So Sarah, I'm so glad I said yes and that you are a guest on my show. This has been amazing.
It's been so great. I've loved chatting with you and opened my eyes to so many things. I mean, I think it's so great to talk, and I feel like we can all help each other when we're just open and honest and, there for each other. So I appreciate the time. Thanks for saying yes.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks everybody too for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.